So good afternoon, everyone. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Nishant Kashyap. I am editor of Tagma Times magazine, and I'll be responsible for hosting this session today. And on behalf of Tagma Management, I welcome you all and Mr. Tej Kumar, Associate Vice President, Operations, Product Development, and Quality at Toyoda Gosei, South India Private Limited, to the 10th edition of Tool Talk. So as we all know, automotive is the biggest customer of tooling industry globally. However, the automotive industry is going through many changes in recent time. Electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, shared mobility, lightweighting, electrification of automobiles are some of the trends that we see. Interestingly, there are many startups also in this domain now, which was unimaginable a decade ago. It was earlier thought that automotive is only for the large company, but there are many startups around the world. They are giving neck-to-neck competition to many large established players as well. So clearly we can see these are the interesting phase in automotive industry. However, it will definitely have some impact on the suppliers and tool makers. How it will impact the tool makers, what changes tool makers will have to make, and what all they need to adopt. We'll learn in this today's session in next 30-40 minutes. And to discuss all these things, we have Mr. Tej Kumar. And now I would like to invite Mr. Shanmuga Sundaram, Vice President, Tagma India, to introduce Mr. Kumar to the audience. Over to you, Mr. Shan.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone. On behalf of Tagma and on behalf of Tagma EC members, we welcome Mr. B.Thej Kumar for this December evening. Mr. Tej Kumar, a plastic professional with a vast experience of 24 years at present with Toyoda Gosei South India Private Limited. Mr. Kumar is an MBA in Operations Management and postgraduate in Plastic Engineering from SIPET, emerging in top 5 across all India exams. This also has been backed by an engineering degree in Polymer Science and Technology from the University of Mysore. Trained on Toyota production system at AOTS and Toyota Gosei Company, Japan, leadership management at IIM, and global leadership at Rose Business School, University of Michigan. Robust quality of Tagushishan, he is a certified global quality Tandushi leader appointed by Toyota Gosei, Japan for safety system and quality promotion. Mr. Kumar is also the advisory board member, Board of Studies in Engineering College, University, and panel member, governing council member of Professional Organization and Association, Regional Advisory Committee of SIPET, Government of India. Mr. Tej Kumar, it's very nice to be with you today. Let's interact and please throw us a light about what's happening in the automotive industry. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Shan. So now I request everyone to keep yourself in mute mode, and if you have any questions for Mr. Tej Kumar, please post them in a chat box, which Mr. Kumar can address at the end of this session. So with your permission, Mr. Kumar, can we start the session now?
Yeah, very good afternoon. I think we can go ahead. First of all, before we start, let me thank the Tagma team for arranging this program, an opportunity for all the tooling fraternity and the related industries to be present over here and share the various topics which is of more relevance to us in the upcoming years. So thank you all, and I look forward to a good interaction in the next 30 to 40 minutes of time. Thank you.
So to set the tone of this session, Mr. Kumar, I would request you to share your opinion on the emerging trends in the global automotive industry versus the Indian automotive industry, and how those trends are going to impact the component industry.
Very apt question. When we are talking about the emerging trends today, as we know, like everybody talks about the digitalization, and digitalization in terms of automotive industry is also gathering pace. And particularly when we are looking at the global automotive industry, referring to the developments in US or the Europe, where and also to an extent in Japan, you can see the impact of using technology in terms of the software is so high where today artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, everything is brought into automotive industry, whether it's manufacturing or even up to the end user. So
Right.
we are seeing like the driverless cars, which are already in practice in the US. So the way the European and the US market is progressing in this direction is much ahead of what we see in India. Okay. And in India, you see that we are now just trying to enter into so-called EV segment, or we are talking about the hybrid technologies, and we are maturing much faster, but we have to keep in pace with the global trend. It would take some time. And to the question of how auto component industries, I think this is a very valid point where any changes happening in terms of the design requirements, in terms of the customer requirements, that is OEM requirements,
Right.
because of the changes in the industry, will definitely have a significant impact on the auto component industry. We can see a sea change happening in terms of the features of the cars. For example, as we all know, the recently launched XUV 700, if you see the features of the car, you can see how it has drawn the attention of the customers. Then we have the most of the vehicles from the Tata being an NCAP regulation meeting the 5-star rating. So when we talk about the change in the OEM requirements, which are being widely accepted by the customers across India, so there are opportunities for many auto component industries to design and develop products in terms of whether it could be the interior products, or it could be the hybrid technology, or the focus on SUV segment, which calls for a different set of products altogether. Just if we take say, SUV segments will require the roof rails, which normally the sedans doesn't have. So those sort of influence is there when there is so much of developments happening in terms of the industry, which is relative to auto component. Plus, it's an opportunity for auto components industry to export. Today you have people exporting to South Africa, to Brazil, to United States, and also to some of the European countries, where the export numbers surpass the domestic market numbers. So this is really a very good opportunity where the Indian auto component industries will definitely have a bigger future. And keeping in mind the environmental trends, the EV segment coming up, and also the SDG. SDG is the Sustainable Development Goals, which everyone is talking about. I think auto component industry is poised for a very big growth in terms of Indian operations in the next decade or so.
Right. Right. So thanks for charting out the trends in global and the Indian automotive industry. Now, as you said, it is clear that these trends will have a direct impact on the component suppliers, and that will definitely impact the tooling suppliers. So when it comes to the OEMs or the component manufacturer, what are the major expectations from the tool makers with respect to the procurement of tools?
See, can I, if I want to understand it better, you are
Right.
referring to the expectations from the OEMs towards the tool makers, right?
Yes, right. Right.
Yeah. So definitely, see today, every OEMs are looking at launching cars at a much rapid scale than what it was a decade ago. Today, the
Right.
development time has been crushed down to less than 2 years. Earlier, it was 3.5 to 4 years. Today, people are launching models, and if you see some of the companies like Tata, the Skoda, which have declared their plan of launching about 15 to 20 models in a year, or maybe less than 18 months. So you can see an enormous development happening. That means to say that once these projects are in the pipeline, the biggest influenced companies are the tool makers, whether it is not only the plastic injection tools, then you also have the various other tool and dies which are being manufactured for the various processing technology.
Right.
And what does a customer expect? See, this is one of the key points when we are talking from the global quality, and some people use the word localization. So global quality with a localized approach, and this is where the challenge lies. And when a customer particularly today talks about is the target data, the deadlines, the lead time. So what we were developing a tool of 4 months or 16 weeks to 18 weeks. Today, the customer wants it in less than 12 weeks or 10 weeks. So the biggest challenge will be how a tool maker can meet the deadlines, target, the event requirements. One is that. Second is the flexibility of manufacturing. Unfortunately, we have seen that in many of the tooling industries, whether it is a small or big, for the reasons known by themselves, and many of us also know, it's sometimes very difficult to get the schedule changed or being flexible to meet the requirements. Flexibility, I talk in terms of engineering change management. See, this is bound to happen when you're in the project stage. Based on certain feedback from the OEMs, you need to make some small design changes. That means engineering changes. So how far are we equipped? So the OEM always look at how flexible a supplier, particularly the tool maker, is capable of handling these type of sudden changes or requirements. Then the third point is about the capacity and the resources. The biggest challenge today is about the resources in India. May it be raw material, may it be the manpower, or could it be in terms of the infrastructure present? So this is one of the biggest hurdles where we see that many a times, because, and particularly in the raw material, which all of us know how we suffered in the COVID time. Okay, that is an exception. Every year we did not have a COVID, at least till 2019, but the story is the same. So the raw material and resource availability is one of the key thing which a customer is focused. And most important thing where today, after the reflection of COVID, all the management will always look at is how are we prepared to face any contingencies, any such major issues like this COVID. How could we handle pandemic, or it could be some disasters. That is from the negative side of it. At the same time, we are also looking at some social or geopolitical issues related to some interstate disputes. We have seen the issues related to festival holidays where a state is got 10 weeks, 10 days of holiday, but the another state will not have. Lot of these type of other challenges are there. So how are we prepared to overcome these type of shortcomings is one thing. Now the third thing is that proactive approach. Let me tell you, Kashyap san, this is one thing which we are doing almost like every project we do more than 50 to 100, or now we are doing more than 180 tools now. I'm talking primarily in India. One of the biggest challenge we face is the transparency. Transparency in the sense like if there is a problem, most of the tool makers try to do it themselves, and they do not want to so-called disturb the customer. I mean, I'm using this word disturb because they feel that let us try our best, let us try our best. But when things go beyond control, then that is where the information flows. So what happens is that you will have no time to react to such situations. So today all OEMs look at, please come within Toyota language, we say bad news first. So please open up the bad news, be transparent. So this is one of the things which we always look at, how proactively you share the the negative information. And then of course financial strength is one of the key point. Today we have seen many companies suffered, may it be because of COVID or any other reason. I think this is one of the key. If we have had the experience of this as well, where we could not even move the tool out of the organization because of some financial issues and associated the legal points which have come across. So financial strength is very key. And the last and important point is like how are the tool maker in a position to really solve the tooling issues before the tool shipment happens. So this is the key. So these are some of the points which is become very important, and which every every OEM or even every customer looks at tool makers.
Right. So thanks for charting out expectations from the tool makers. I'm sure all the tool makers have learned something new. And as we all know that in automotive industry, or maybe in any industry, it is very important that you work with the right partner. So what are the key evaluation factors of any automotive OEMs before finalizing the tool rooms for any project? What are they look into any particular tool rooms?
Yeah, I think you have hit the bullseye. I think the previous question when we talk about expectations from the OEMs or the tier ones as well. So the relationship in terms of evaluation of these tool makers. So for example, most of the companies, at least in our organization, we do the survey of all the tool rooms much before the kickoff of the project, probably about 8 months to 10 months before the actual milestones of the project start. So we try to assess on various factors, and definitely most of the customers would do that. One of the key thing is, of course, I did mention, one is PQCDS approach, that is their productivity, then the quality, the design capability, delivery, and particularly the Japanese organization and Toyota in particular would also emphasize on the safety aspects, how safety are taken care of. So safety is very, very important, particularly in the tooling industry where we are dealing with weights of more than 5 tons, 10 tons, up to 30 tons in case of bumpers. So anything can go out of control if things are not followed. So safety becomes one of the important criteria apart from the resources and infrastructure. Second point is about the engineering capability, and this is where when I'm talking about engineering capability, it's about a process engineering as well as the design point of view. So how well the team can integrate with the customers, or probably in most of the cases, if the customer is from Japan or is he from the Europe or in the US, so the integration point is the key. So how well we can gel and work together in cohesion. And all the more important is the skill level today. That's biggest challenge in the tooling industry, and of course this is where in every industry, but one of the key aspect of tooling industry is the skill level of the people. So particularly from the design and development point of view, these are the parameters which will be evaluated. And
Right.
another important thing is about checking fixture and gauges. I think this is very, very important point. Majority of the tool makers or at least I can say globally and India as well, have some understanding in terms of working with the CF maker. We call checking fixture, so I say CF or the gauge
Yeah.
maker. But if the integration doesn't happen between the checking fixture maker and the tool maker, I think we end up a lot of time and resources in setting it right. So it's a very important point which every one of us now look at. So it's always better to have under one roof the tool making and checking fixture as a responsibility point of view. So this is one of the factor which is looked at, and particularly in case of some of the companies where design is very critical, how the design backup can be worked out with the tool maker. So whether it is domestic or international, so whether it's an MNC company, for example, a company which is having multiple locations apart from India. So whether we can bank upon those affiliate companies if there are some requirements. So that gives enough strength when we look at the evaluation point of view. So this is another factor which could be a favorable aspect because of a risk management thinking way. Likewise, then the overall infrastructure and the network. See, the network is very important. Not every tool maker will be able to have all the process, but definitely his network would do a great deal. So does he have the 10 set of infrastructure? But if he doesn't have 10, he has got 8. But which are the other companies which is going to support him, whether it could be a wire cutting or it could be a sparking. I'm just giving you an example. So how strong is the network? So these are some of the key points which will be evaluated in the scale of 1 to 10 and the decision. And all the more, the last important point, of course, which I will tell is one is the location. The location of the tool maker plays a very important role, considering the grain requirement. If the because we know that we have limitations of the grain facilities available with a couple of people. So the transport of the tools to the grain maker, proving all these is play a very important role. So this also will be a key point when the evaluation aspects are being considered.
Yeah. Right. So uh, while talking about the trends in the first question, you mentioned that electric vehicle is one of the trend that is shaping up the global automotive industry. So when we see that electric vehicles are becoming mainstream, there will be a lot of changes in components, especially in the engine block side. So what impact it will have on the tool makers, how they should gear up to, to face the challenge of electric vehicles.
I think this is the buzzword. Everybody is now talking about EV, whether
Right.
it's a two-wheeler or the four-wheeler. And the government of India has banked on a very positive picture of having 30% of EV sales by 2030. This is what is the government of India's target. And their focus is in that 70% they want to have commercial vehicles, and maybe around 80% they are targeting the two-wheeler industry. Already we can see the emergence of Ather, Ola, particularly in South India, where they are really picking up good numbers.
Right.
For I think many of us would be knowing that 25 states have EV policy already. All the states have got EV policy now. Every state wants to provide some good platform, and particularly Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and I think recent discussion I could see one big battery manufacturing company coming up, signing up with Maharashtra government at Talegaon facility. So everybody is just following that lane of EV. But let us look at the vehicles. Let me talk from the four-wheeler point of view. Just to simplify things, what are the outgoing parts? I mean to say, what are all the parts which may not be required once the the electric vehicle comes in, where the IE is not there, or the IE engines or IC engines are not there. So then the engine and the associated components, where we have many of the plastic components which were used as a weight reduction, like subframe, the front module, the covers, even the front grille, for example. You could see that, even the Kona vehicle of Hyundai. So you could see that, there is no grill at all. So, and then fuel hoses, most important. There are a lot of components, plastic components, and, some rubber and metallic component which goes into the fuel hoses. So these are some of the products which will lose its place. But what comes in is then the battery components, then the battery housings, then the fire resistant plastic products, which are very crucial for the EV vehicles or the hybrid vehicles per se. Then apart from the vehicle, to support these EV vehicles, you need a very strong infrastructure in terms of charging stations. So indirectly also it creates an opportunity where a lot of plastic applications are required in terms of setting up the infrastructure and helping the EV journey. But what remains unchanged, we have talked from outgoing, we have talked from the incoming. What we can see here is the instrument panel, the dashboards are what we call, the consoles, the door trims still will be there. It has to be there, and the seating systems. So most of the plastic components apart from, and the bumpers, of course. So majority of the tool making industry will not be having a negative impact because of this emergence of EV. I could see a positive impact emerging out with large number of plastic components, replacing the existing IC engines and the associated products. And this would give a lot of opportunity for tool makers to develop more tools and like versatile tools, I can say.
Right. So nice to know that emergence of TV will give a lot of business opportunities to tool makers. So my next question is regarding the COVID and what changes it has brought. So since the time COVID has emerged, we have seen that Indian government has proactively launched a lot of campaigns and schemes to help the localization of many industries. So Atmanirbhar Bharat and PLI scheme in various industries, and especially they launched for the battery manufacturing and the auto component as well. So what kind of growth are we talking about because of the PLI schemes in the tooling industry and the overall ecosystem?
Yes, first of all, I think personally, it's my personal view that I should congratulate the team or the set of people who came up with this idea of a PLI, that incentive linked scheme, which is definitely going to be a booster for many of the industries who are really impacted and having a very tough time in particularly the post-COVID situation. Like most of the industries have shut down. And it's not only tooling industry, but other industries. But in reference to tooling industry, it's a very big impact which we have seen. And the phenomenal activity in terms of PLI scheme is that it's covering 13 sectors, and the most promising thing is more than 60% of their budget. The government has, I think roughly about 1.97 lakh crores, or I can say about 2 lakh crores is the budget which is meant for PLI. And out of which almost about 57 to 60 crores is meant for only auto industry. This is a very big boost for the overall auto fraternity, whether it be an automobile or auto component industry. And this would definitely energize the industry in terms of galloping back to the normalcy. And some cases, it has been so promising that they are going to get a tax rebate of 16 to, incentives about 13 to 16% are going up to 20%. This is what as the policy says. How far and how long we can really make use of this policy is something which we all need to really work on and enhance our potentials to see that, because it's very clearly mentioned productivity linked. So we have to work on our weak areas and enhance our efficiency so that we will be able to get those incentives and benefits. And I'm 100% sure, particularly for MSMEs and most of the tooling industries which are part of MSMEs, this is going to help indirectly, because the scheme would help many of the OEMs and the auto component industry, which will call for generation of new tools or development of new tools. I'm sure that this is one promising activity which is going to really help the overall sector, and we should be able to see good results in the upcoming years because of this scheme.
Right. So capacity, low capacity has been one of the challenge in the Indian tooling industry. So looking at this situation, going forward, would tier one and OEMs will backward integrate and set up their own captive tool rooms, or ask existing tool makers to enhance their capacity? So according to you, what will be the trend going forward?
See, actually, what we could see in most of the OEMs today are looking at focusing on their core area of vehicle manufacturing.
Right.
Okay, so they are mainly looking at operation which covers about the vehicle assembly, confirmation, evaluation of vehicle inspection, rolling out of the factory at the desired takt time. And they are trying to look at outsourcing the key activities of many companies. Have a in-house paint shop, some have got molding, some have got welding. You have some basic areas, but majority of the companies are now trying to move away from that. Their focus is trying to be on the core activity of assembling the vehicles and rolling out of the plant. So with that as a mindset, definitely I don't see that most of the tier ones or the OEMs would be looking at setting up of a tool industry, because as we all know, there are two things. One is it's a capital intensive industry, tooling industry, and it
Right.
calls for a lot of investment. And OEMs or tier ones may not be experts of tooling in terms of or in comparison to what the actual tool makers are. So I don't see a threat in terms of these OEMs or tier one trying to do that. But in some cases, yes, experiments have been there, experiments have been done, particularly considering the capacity. But what some of the companies are trying to reach out to is trying to look at some key players in the tooling industry, be part of their journey, trying to associate with them, handhold them, and try to see that how systems and improvements can be brought in so that they help the enhancement of their capacity and the resource availabilities. Thereby, indirectly, they are going to support the OEMs or the tier ones. So I don't see that is a major constraint. But of course, only one challenge today we as I represent a tier one, or majority of the people look at is in terms of this quality and the lead time, which I already expressed, and the service requirement. So keeping that in mind, many a times the discussions happen that can we not set up a tool room of our own? But still the days are far away, like if really that type of a decision taking place may not happen in the near future. But it all depends on how the Indian tooling industry responds in terms of the requirements of lead time, quality, and delivery. If everything is started falling in place, I don't think any tier one or even OEM will think of setting up a tool room facility. Rather, they would be very happy to get it done with the tool makers, as that is their core activity.
Right, right. So you said in your answer that the setting up tool room is a very capital intensive industry, and you also touched upon the subject that hand holding is also required, which is my next question actually. So as we know that most of the tool makers also fall under the SME category. According to you, what actions can be taken to handhold and uplift these medium and small tool makers from the OEMs or from the government side?
I would like to be point blank and true to heart when I make these comments. Because see, ultimately we are sitting on this platform trying to understand each other and with the purpose of
Right,
helping each other. So I mean, let me be very clear on that aspect. So when we're talking about what is that we can do, or the industry in terms of OEMs or tier ones can do to help the tooling industry, I think we have to look at the basic fundamentals of the activities in every organization. Particularly, I will tell this point: safety is one of the most neglected areas in the tooling industry because for various reasons. So, but unfortunately, we can see like in any most of the companies you go. When I go, I observe that you can see a person with only 4 fingers, 3 fingers, or a thumb out. Like this has become so normal. We consider it as it's like abnormality has become normal, but we can really relate if an unsafe situation and an unsafe act lead into an accident, how big it can impact the operations of the industry. Sometimes it becomes a legal issue, then the industries need to close. We don't see the what is the impact of those or I can say like intangible impacts. We don't see the morale, all those things. So how far we can work on safety, that's my primary point. Second point is on the quality. Let me tell you, this point I've been telling from so many years and I still stand by that. We are all very good. We have the best tooling facility infrastructure. We get the best of the machines from Taiwan, Germany, and of course some of the Indian machines are Japanese machines. We do up to T0 excellently well. I mean, we are able to achieve 90 to 92% of whatever is the requirement in terms of accuracy or the requirements. But for going from 92 to 98 or 100, I think that will be an Himalayan task. That
right,
if you develop a tool in 12 weeks to reach 92%, you would be taking another 12 to 16 weeks to reach that real perfection. I think that is where we all need to work, and we have to analyze where we are going wrong. And of course, this doesn't happen just like that. So one is the interest from the tooling industry. At the same time, tier ones and OEMs, how they can really join hands and help the fraternity is something which I always stand by, and I still watch for that. So, and of course, there are some government schemes which give training, support, all those things. One of the important point which I would like to see is also about associations like TAGMA. There are some associations like CII. There are many such associations. They are doing a fantastic job of bringing under one platform. And so how more effectively we can see in order to strengthen the fundamentals of the organization and help this, the tooling industry, and particularly the so-called MSME sector in the tooling industry itself, those with the small scale and the medium scale. I think it's not a one solution. It's a joint effort required from all of us to see that we improve together. So that's what is my point of view, Kashyap-san.
right, right. So just a couple of more questions from my side before we take on the audience questions. So
Please,
while
sir.
talking about the key evaluation factors, you had also said that the skill set is also one of the factors that OEMs and tier ones see in the tool makers. So finding and retaining talented manpower is another challenge for tool makers. According to you, what actions can be taken to overcome this challenge?
Uh, it's a really big challenge. It's not only referring to the tool maker. I think today any industry is passing through this phase, and the today's youth and the people who are in any business scenario, the thinking way is totally different from what it was 30 or 50 years back.
Right.
Earlier, it was like, working for an organization for 20, 25, 30, or some people, from the first job, that will be their last job as well. Like, we can see that happening. But today, that's not the situation. And this is the same in relation to tooling and development, particularly from the design point of view, where we see more higher level of attrition in the design segment of the tooling industry, because it is something like, I would rather compare it to software industry, where today, the software engineers, if they stay for 3 years, I can see in the LinkedIn or any social media, they will be celebrating 3 years, and the company will celebrate their presence for 3 years, which normally people used to do for 20 years or 25 years. So 3 years is such a big period. So similarly in the design area, because the opportunities are so much available today in India and overseas, and particularly the skill levels of Indians per se in the terms of design, I think they are one of the leading stars undoubtedly across the globe when it comes to design and development. So they always carry an extra edge, and that is where they find always a greener patch than what they are serving. So skill is something unique. I personally feel that we cannot treat the CPET, GTTC or NTTF candidates same way to any other diploma holders. They have to be a couple of lines or mark above the normal diploma. I'm not degrading or telling anything, but definitely the skill levels of these tool makers or the tool design engineers is much above the normal other streams of engineering diploma holders. So how far we are going to encourage them? And the most important thing is that how to take care of this cream of people is in terms of not just money or salary. We cannot retain paying salaries. Even you pay the best of the salary or more than that, I think you don't have a guarantee of staying back. So what is it calling for? It is calling for an environment. It is calling for a situation where he can see a growth in the organization, irrespective of whether the organization is having a 20 crore turnover or it is having a 200 crore turnover or a 1,000 crore turnover. Does he see a future in this company? So that type of a succession planning, that type of a growth planning is one of the key things. Salary is another thing. And a conducive, safe, healthy environment. Are we creating that challenge? Because tooling industry has to slog many a times. Sundays they have to work, all those things. But are we creating a real work-life balance also to the tooling industry? So these are some of the other points which I strongly feel will help us minimize the attrition levels of the people, which definitely is something talking about the skill. So this is one point which every management has to think. And another important thing which I would like to stress upon is, whenever I see any conference or seminars or workshops, this is my observation point. So please don't misunderstand me. Majority of these type of conferences, whether it's a plastic or automotive or tooling, we find only the senior people, the top management attending majority of the thing. But those platforms are an occasion or an opportunity for so much of new trends and new knowledge. Why can't we promote the junior level or the junior management or middle management people to be part of it? I don't find that a reason to say why a 3 years experienced person should not be sent to a conference just because it is done in something like Oberoi Hotel. It costs 15,000. It's necessary. It's not necessary that only a senior management, top management has to go. I am finding this in majority of the conferences. So this is one way of motivating and helping them to upgrade. This is truly my viewpoint based on the various conferences where I am. I might be wrong also, but this is one of the point which I will always take. And second thing which I would like is give an opportunity for all these youngsters, the people with so much of bubbling energy, to also share their knowledge within your organization. How much of the companies try to give an opportunity to showcase? I will tell you, nobody, sorry, I don't want to use nobody, or majority of them doesn't give, because you are meant to come and do a job, you are expected to do a job. He will be having so much of information because of today's youth are, attached to the gadgets and the technology. They would be knowing much more than what we have known in the last 25, 30 years. Given platform wherein he can share his knowledge. So these are something we have to try different, which makes him connected back to the organization and say that, This is the place they're trying to help me to grow, at the same time enrich my knowledge, and he finds that he's involved in many of the activities. This is my personal strong viewpoint, and it can be considered as a suggestion, or it's a point of consideration for the respected people present today's program.
Right. So there are many ways to make this industry more glamorous for people to stay and get attracted to. So my last question is, which I ask in every tool talk, what are your suggestions to the Indian tool makers? I have to ask you, 4 or 5 suggestions that you can list out.
See, maybe some of my friends in the tooling industry whom I have met and discussed would be there in this program, and they would definitely agree. First and foremost thing is that we have all of us need to work with first time right, every time right approach.
Okay.
The moment we talk about any project or development, we always think that we have an opportunity to do trials. Trial 1, T0, OTS, whatever you call, T0, T1, T2, T3, or everybody has their own terminologies. How can we make, how do we plan, how do we synchronize our activities, how do we strategize our approach to make it first time right? So this is something which I'm finding the missing point, where whenever you talk about a tool maker, he says majority, sir, T0 we will achieve 90%. Why 90%? Why cannot I make 100%? Come se come, I have to target 100%, so it may come to 95%. So how can I re-strategize my team, my approach? So I strongly believe that as long as we don't take that thought process of first time right, every time right, I think that's going to be tough for us to work on some improvements. And second point I always strongly believe is micromanagement. I'll tell you, this is one of the very weak areas. We all have a habit of having the schedule. We have a list of activities to be done. So we have machining operation, we have designing, then we have the the wire, etc. But we don't mark it to the day wise level. We never, and when occasion comes, you have to do it to hour wise also. I'm telling you, we sometimes, in many of our cases, when situation becomes bad, we monitor every hour of activity. But the moment we start looking at a schedule, we always look at a macro schedule or a milestone schedule. And down the line, I find this missing. So if you do not micromanage these activities, every second counts. Such activities of 1 hour loss in every machining process, a 20-hour loss across a team of people. If you multiply with every segment, I think that is where the challenge is. So we have to do, tool makers have to do micromanagement. The project manager has to do. The next is machining department, assembly department, or the polishing department. Everybody has to have a micro, we call it in our language, child schedule, means master schedule and a child schedule. We have to work with that approach. Another important point I always say is that, see, today, once a tool maker is worked for 15 years or 20 years or something like that, then he will resign and he will start his own industry. Nothing wrong. Entrepreneurship is required. But we are all fighting for the same pie. So we had 50 tool makers, we'll have 60 tool makers. But the growth of the industry, looking at the growth of the industry and the size of the industry, and also the financial implications, where as I already mentioned, it's a capital intensive industry. Rather than everyone fighting for that pie of business, can we join together? Some of the Chinese companies, which I have personally seen, is that they are all so, I don't want to say good or bad, but I've seen it happening that you have one set of company only focusing on sparking, one set of company focusing on only milling operations. So you are very focused approach, and like how the capacity balancing and resource requirements can be set. So nobody is off the business. But in our case, I think everybody wants to look on that aspect. I'm not saying it is wrong, but look at the business scenario and the approach possible, and then we need to take that. And as I already mentioned, another important is please focus on skill development of your people. When you interview the person, you always look at the skill. After that, you try to get the work done. But how much of efforts are the tool makers putting in order to enhance the skill of the people? wherein training is one of the key thing. How far am I making him, or how much of the budget are we fixing to our yearly plan of training in terms of skill development? I'm not telling that nobody does it. There might be quite a number of people, but it is very, very less in number. And as I mentioned, safety is very, very important. And another challenge is about the raw material dependency, where raw material is one of the biggest challenge. So how well we are having the global connect is something which is very, very important. And last and foremost point today, apart from automotive industry, one of the promising industry in India is particularly the aerospace industry, which is really catching up very well. So how can we diversify the business into different segments like aerospace, pharmaceutical, and the so-called the latest technology world of the digitalization. So these are some of the things where we need to go for diversification and strategize. I'm sure that in the due course of time they will be in a better place than what they are today.
Right. So skill development, focused approach, micromanagement of for all the operations, and first time right, every time right is the motto that you are suggesting to the tool makers. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for that. Thank you so much. So let's start taking the questions from the audience. Uh, okay, there are quite a few questions. Uh, First question is from Mr. Gopalakrishnan. He writes, Mr. Tej Kumar San, in your opinion, which will be the most affected due to the advent of EV and its acceptance on the future date in a big way by a consumers? Die casting, press tooling, or plastic molds? And will it be the same for both four-wheeler and two-wheeler segment?
Yeah, thank you, sir. As we all are aware, the EV segment, as I mentioned, I particularly from the plastic injection molding industry point of view, the impact cannot be very much. I can say very clearly, because the majority of the plastics are interiors and exteriors, which doesn't change. So there could be certain, the grill or the front fascia which changes. So relatively the impact will be less, and it will also throw opportunities for some of the battery associated component manufacturings. Then of course some of the the engine components, the forged components or even the aluminum die cast components could be replaced. But when it comes to the vehicle chassis, the frame, etc., I think since all those things remain, there will not be a very significant impact even on those things, particularly those industries which are related to the engine component and the engine assembly, the casting and the forging industry. Yes, definitely they will have a significant hit. So that's the way it has to be, and I think some diversification is needed in those areas.
Right, right. Now another question from Mr. Deepak Sangle is, why China is leading in tool making even though they are remote and there is language barrier?
Okay. China's work culture and China's as a country culture itself is totally different. See, language, of course, I don't find language as a barrier, even whether it is China, Germany, or Japan. I think they all have excelled in their areas. Language has never been a barrier. And today we talk about Japanese products, we talk about the quality of German products, and today we are talking about the manufacturing capabilities of China. So language has never been a barrier. I think that should be not a big consideration at all. But when it comes to like the cost of manufacturing, I think that plays a very important role. So one of the key factors when we look at the cost of manufacturing, and just for your information, so-called most of the industries, it's a global survey which was done in 2020. Every industry, I'm talking from OEM to the last company, at least the organized sector, they earmark 20 to 25% of their total turnover as a waste. So it's something which is very enormous amount. The US, for example, in 2019, $8 trillion is the amount which is considered as a waste in their operations. So why am I talking about the waste is because when we don't work on our efficiency improvement, where waste is an important part, I think that is where our cost of manufacturing is going for a hit. And where China, has a advantage is that they are having higher volumes and their efficiency is much better, and they have a better ways of waste management in terms of in comparison to what we are today, which will definitely help them to have a better scale of production with a economical cost or an affordable cost, and naturally then that makes them advantageous to pick up the orders not only in their own country but also we have seen like how many Indian tool makers, how many Indian companies have invested there in the toolings of China. So I think it's all about the efficiency, it's all about the networking. Of course, technology plays an important role and the speed. I still remember I got one tool done in China, T0 sample for one of the steering component, which was less than 8 weeks. T0 from design to T0, which I couldn't have imagined that fast because there was some emergency. We had to take the decision. 8 weeks, I went to China and I could get T0. So the speed and response also plays an important role. So these are some of the factors which has definitely put them on a a better edge compared to us.
Right. So one more question on what is the impact of Make in India initiative on technological initiatives and manufacturing performance of Indian manufacturing SMEs? From Mr. Anup Chavan.
Thank you, Anup San. I think again this is a very promising activity, and many of the organizations, many startups have really utilized this opportunity. And it's not because of the message or the theme, because of the scheme what the government has come up with. Many associated industries are able to realize that, whether you call Digital India, Skill India, or Atmanirbhar Bharat, whatever may be the theme, but how are we connecting to it? So how I can influence getting the business in terms of this, under what scheme we can get. So there are so much of government schemes, whether it is not only in the manufacturing sector or any other sector, many of the people lack awareness on that. But once this is known completely and clearly, and when industry starts really looking at taking these advantages, I think we stand a very good opportunity to develop our industries where we will also get some financial support. We may also get some, the technical or the training support or the skill support. I think this is definitely helping us, and we should start exploring it more in terms of the areas in which we are working. That is why what I strongly feel.
Right. There is a note for you from Mr. D.K. Sharma, our immediate past president of TAGMA India. He says, thank you, dear B.Thej Kumar San, for sharing your informative and frank views with our members. Your views about sending junior teams to industry seminar is very valid and well acknowledged. TAGMA will make a request to all participating organizations to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Right. So there's another question, impact of Industry 4.0 on tool makers in future.
Oh, I think this is another buzzword, what we can say. Industry 4.0 is something which is the need of the hour, what I can say, but it may not be as an immediate requirement. Let me tell you why. Because it's nothing but an integration of IoT, Internet of Things, AI, and machine learning. What's all about it? It's all about data analysis, supply chain management. It's all about how we are doing and how we are expected to do. And for this, we are using the technology and the software to identify our weak areas, identify the improvement areas. So in terms of tooling industry, normally people say that this can be for a FMCG goods. Like suppose you are going to make about 10 lakh pieces of product, some A product. So where you have a continuous cycle of production. So those sort of industries from RM to dispatch and the supply chain is what we can integrate, and up to the customer side. But the tooling industry also can use this because it talks about the reduction of breakdowns. It talks about virtual manufacturing. It talks about supply chain management. Any operations, like you can see from the machining operation, if you analyze every process in the tooling industry, are we really effectively utilizing it? What is the effectiveness and efficiency segment? How are we capturing it? So when you really look at that, these type of data analysis is going to be the key input for Industry 4.0, for which even the tooling industry can use it to sense potential failures, to enable the quick response time. It could be a response time from A process to B process. So it is definitely possible, provided we have a path driven towards making it as a digital approach in terms of manufacturing activities in the tooling industry. So it's not far away, or it's not only restricted to any FMCG goods or any continuous manufacturing product industry, but we can leverage the concept of Industry 4.0 definitely into the tooling industry, and with the proper approach plan, considering the nature of operations and the scale of operations and the type of infrastructure what the tooling industry has, but definitely it is possible.
Right. So we have a very limited time, so I'll just take one or two more questions. So there is a question from Mr. Devraj. What do you think about the future of our tool making industry in comparison with China? Are we inching closer towards them?
I can say we are progressing, but it would take a little more time or some more years to really catch up, because the size of the China tool making industry and compared to our Indian tool making industries, there's a big gap. Let us accept the reality. And the way the market responds in China with the type of products, I think the way we are doing it here is something still a long way to go. So, but the growth factor is there in India, as we are seeing that today majority of the tool makers in India are also exporting tools to overseas. That's really a positive sign. So how the export business will grow is purely because of your efficiency factor and how we are able to enhance on our PQCDS, productivity, quality, cost, and delivery, and of course, which I always say is safety. So if we are able to enhance that and avoid wastages and improve our efficiency, thereby reduce our cost. I am not asking for a cost reduction. Customer will never pay you extra for the wastages we have. So how far we are going to reduce the cost? How are we improving the cost of manufacturing? How are we avoiding the cost of poor quality? So if we really start working on that, I think we will be able to start, nearing to the markets of China, but definitely it's a long way to go. But yes, we are on the right track, I can say.
Right. So the last question from Mr. Gopalakrishnan again. From the point of view as a component user or component manufacturer to or mold users, what is your view for using high strength aluminum instead of tool steel? Because the advantages of lightweight, almost 1/3 of density, anti-rust, and most importantly, it's a thermal conductivity which reduces the cycle time.
As sir has already mentioned the merits of using aluminum, there's no doubt about it. But let us see in what context and for what requirements we are looking into. So of course, aluminum is one tool in terms of the die casting industry or in plastic molding industry. If we are talking about a tool like we normally talk about 5 lakh shots, or we talk about 8 lakhs, and nowadays customer is talking about 10 lakh shots in some of the cases. So we are really having this situation. Are we in a position to sustain to that level without compromising on the quality? There could be a reduction in terms of cycle time. All those benefits are there, but today's situation is, particularly when there's a volume based requirements, this question always crops up whether we need to go into that. But I don't say total no to it. We can definitely consider, but how can we make the tool, rather than working on not only the aluminum aspect as a replacement, but how can we make the tool more lighter and compact, where all we can reduce the tool cost, that is the raw material cost. So that is one area which every OEMs and the tier ones like us are looking at. And some cases, yes, we do go for aluminum as a requirement, but I think it has got its own limitations as well. But we have to see in what context we need to take care of those requirements.
Right. So that marks the end of this session. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, for answering those questions and for the insightful session. It was a pleasure to host you today, and I'm sure everyone has learned something new today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And so this marks the end of the webinar. Thank you for attending. We hope you all have learned something new. And from Tagma Management, I wish you all a very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And stay tuned. We'll come up with new topics
Thank
next
you.
year.
Thank
And there are
you.
many exciting things coming up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nishant. It was nice interaction. Tej Kumar, very nice of you. Lot of inputs. Well taken. The juniors to be represented in all the seminars. Yes, very nice input. A lot of insights about the industry. Thank you so much for your time.
Sir, I should thank all the participants. I should thank Tagma because I believe strongly we all are in the same fraternity with only a small change in our activities in day-to-day life. If we all gel together, I think, like one gentleman asked, we can surpass China one day for sure.
Yes, we all are
Thank you.
towards that goal. Yes, make in India and Atmanirbhar is our goal. Yes, we will as Tagma, all the EC members, we will support on that cause.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and
Thank
wish
you.
you all
Nice
a
of you.
happy New Year in advance, and look forward
Thank you
to
so much,
interacting
sir.
with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Wish
you
you
so
too the
much.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nishant.
Thank you. Thanks.